Hello again and welcome back to the channel. This is Michael from TOEFLresources.com. In today's video, a few more secrets of how the TOEFL IBT is scored. We're going to continue our exploration of my speaking score, which uses an implementation of the SpeechWriter, which is also used by ETS to partially score the TOEFL IBT test. Now, I do encourage you to start with the video from a couple days ago where I began exploring these secrets. I'll put a link in the video description down below. But basically in that video, we explored the idea that speaking rate, how fast you speak, how many words are in your answer, has a really profound effect on your TOEFL speaking score. It's not the only thing that matters, but if you do speak quickly, if you do have a lot of words, you have a greater chance of getting a decent score. And specifically, this is the factor which I think really holds people back from that magic 26 points they need. A couple days ago, I was talking to a pharmacist. She needed 26 points to get her professional license, and she had been struggling for like a year and a half to get that score. She was stuck on 25, took the TOEFL again and again and again, kept getting 25. So I spent 1 hour with her and I uploaded her sample answers to my speaking score. And I looked at the reports and I said, yeah, you need to speak more quickly when you take the test. Try it out, see what happens. So 2 days later, she took the test, got 28 points in the speaking section. She came back to me and said, yeah, you were right about that whole speaking quickly thing. Now, I don't mention that to suggest that I'm a good TOEFL teacher. I'm not. I'm old and I'm cranky and I'm impatient. I'm not a great teacher. But what I do believe is that information deserves to be free. Like, expert teachers know this stuff, and some of them will charge you $500 for a video course to tell it to you. You know, others will kind of have you sign up for like 9 months of lessons. I don't think you really need to do that. And so in this video series, I just really want to share the stuff that the teachers know and get it out there so that you can prepare for the test in a more affordable and efficient way. So if that kind of appeals to you, make sure to subscribe to the channel, and I'll keep uploading these videos in the days and weeks ahead. With that out of the way, let's get to it. Let's begin by listening to the same response that I shared with you a couple days ago. This is my 30-point response. It's perfect. Here goes. I agree with the idea of giving children homework on a daily basis. I feel this way for 2 reasons. First of all, I think that it will help children to retain what they learn for a much longer period of time. The only real way for kids to absorb a lesson is to actually go home and repeat it as many times as they possibly can. And in the long run, this kind of thing will lead to a lot more academic success. Secondly, I believe that homework can actually give children an opportunity to bond with their parents. For instance, I got a lot of daily homework when I was in elementary school. In the evenings, I'd go home and I would complete it with my mom and dad, and I'd ask them difficult questions whenever I was having trouble. Eventually, we became really close and bonded. All right, so that's a 30-point response, and you can see my speaking rate was pretty high. It's 99, so that's as high as it can get. I do have some pauses, right? If you look at the waveform, there are a few little parts where you can see I paused, and that usually happened at the end of a sentence or, you know, after a comma or conjunction, something like that. I think I even paused after transitional phrases for a fraction of a second each time. But overall, I'm speaking quickly and fluently. I'm not really slowing down even after sentences. I'm just kind of going as quick as I can. And it doesn't sound like crazy and unnatural, right? That's not much faster than I'm speaking right now. So I don't have to go crazy. I just need to speak at a pretty good pace without a lot of pauses. And that's reflected in the scores here. So you can see my speaking rate is 99, my sustained speech is 99. They're all like really high. You know, once your speaking rate gets pretty high, it does have a cascading impact, I think, on the other scores, which also stay quite high. Even my pronunciation is great. It's not affected by the fact that I'm speaking quickly. My rhythm is 99. My vowels are 92. As we established last time, I think I have a penalty for being a Canadian. My vowels are a little bit funky. My vocabulary scores are good. My grammar score is good. My discourse coherence score is good. So this is a strong answer, right? But the only thing I really want to draw your attention to now is the speaking rate. You know, that had a profound impact on my score. And to prove that, let's listen to a couple more responses. Here's one. Same guy, same me, a lot of the same content, but it's just 24. It's just 24. That's tough because I need 26. Let's listen. I agree with the idea of giving children homework on a daily basis. First of all, I think it helps children to retain what they learn for a much longer period of time. The only real way for kids to absorb a lesson is to actually go home and repeat it as much as they possibly can. In the long run, this kind of thing leads to more academic success. Secondly, I believe children can bond with their parents when they do homework together. For example, I learned a lot while doing math with my dad. So you can see that's a pretty good answer, right? I mean, I answered the question. I've got a lot of content and I've got great pronunciation and good grammar, and yet the score is still just 24. Oof, that's rough. That's not what I need. And look at this. The speaking rate is down to 54. So I'm pretty much middle of the pack here. 54. 46% of the people who take the test have a higher score than me. That's how we can interpret this. And that's the reason for my low score. Basically, that's it. That's almost the only thing you have to look at here. Now, you can see that the pause frequency score itself is okay. Like, there's not a lot of pauses, right? I mean, if you look at the waveform, I guess there's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 pauses. That's not bad for, 45 seconds of speech. And the pauses are in natural places, right? I'm pausing at the end of a sentence. I'm pausing after a transition. I'm pausing like before a conjunction or after a conjunction. So those pauses are like normal. It's like the pauses I have when I'm speaking to you now. So the pauses themselves aren't giving me a bad pause frequency score, nor are they giving me a bad distribution of pauses score, because they're distributed very, very well. That's where pauses are supposed to go. However, they're long, right? They're affecting my speaking rate because, I've got like 2 or 3 seconds here. I got 2 seconds here. I got 2 seconds here. I got like 1.5 seconds, and then I got like 1 second. That's time that I'm not filling with words. So it's affecting my speaking rate. I need to fill those with words in order to get a higher speaking rate. That's almost like basically it. That's what I want to emphasize here. You got to fill those pauses with words. I will draw your attention to one other score. I got a very low phrase length score, which I guess my speaking score refers to something called chunks. That's very hard. It's kind of grammatical. But basically, I think my interpretation is a chunk in this case is the amount of stuff in between 2 really long pauses. So here's a chunk you can see, right? This is a bunch of stuff in between 2 long pauses. Here's another chunk. Here's another chunk. Here's another chunk. You can see, right? This is content between 2 long pauses, a chunk. These chunks are kind of small because the pauses are too long. So that's also affecting your score. In addition to the speaking rate, I'm getting a bad phrase length, a bad chunk score. I'm going to explore chunks in future videos, but for now, I mention it here for you to think about. The main thing, though, is speaking rate. If I fix the speaking rate, I'm going to probably automatically fix the chunk problem. So keep that in mind. Let's watch another video. not another video. Let's listen to another response. This one, 25. 25. Heartbreaking, right? That's the life story of these pharmacists preparing for the test. 25, 25, 25, 25, week after week after week, 25. What did I do wrong this time? They're pretty much the same thing, but let's listen. I agree with the idea of giving children homework on a daily basis. First of all, I think this helps children retain what they learn for a much longer period of time. The only real way for kids to absorb a lesson is to actually go home and repeat it as much as they possibly can. In the long run, this kind of thing leads to a lot more academic success. Secondly, homework gives children an opportunity to bond with their parents. For example, I did homework every day with my dad, and we became much closer. Okay, so you can see what I did there. I have the same number of pauses, basically, and I've just put them in at random, sort of. The score's 25. My speaking rate is 58, so it's actually a little bit faster. That might account for the slightly higher score. It's a little bit better, but it's still not great. And then you can look at the other scores. The pause frequency score is pretty good because there's not a lot of pauses. Like it's not the problem. It's not like the number of total pauses. We'll get to that, by the way. But, you know, it's just that I got all that empty space that's not being filled. So that's the problem of the pause. I need to fill that empty space. Even the distribution of pauses score, it's actually higher than I expected. It's perfect. But again, it reflects the fact that, you know, it's a normal number of pauses, right? That's how I'm speaking to you right now. I'm pausing here and there randomly. That's not a problem, except when it affects your score. And then you can see, again, the phrase length score, a little bit higher, but it's all about those chunks, right? Here's a chunk. Here's a chunk. Everywhere is a chunk. They're not long enough, I think. So if you can make those chunks like really long, if you were to combine these two chunks, that score would go up. We'll experiment with that more in the videos ahead. But anyways, this is actually the best vowel pronunciation I've ever had. 99. I must be sounding like an American. And my rhythm is great too. So even with that perfect native pronunciation, I'm still only getting 25. Darn it. And look at the other stuff that's pretty good. My vocabulary depth, I'm using a lot of uncommon words apparently. It's 93. My vocabulary diversity, I'm using adverbs and adjectives and nouns and verbs. I'm using all kinds of words. I got a 98. Grammar's pretty good, although I don't pay attention to that. Discourse coherence kind of stinks, but again, I don't pay attention to that. It doesn't have a big impact. So despite all these really positive attributes, vocabulary diversity, vocabulary depth, rhythm, vowel pronunciation, repetitions, sustained speech, pause frequency, my score remains a heartbreaking 25. So I need to get rid of these long pauses. I need to fill them with words. I need more words. I need more words per minute. That's going to increase my score. That's almost like the only thing I can improve here, right? Like everything else is pretty good. That's it. That's it. And that is the problem. Now we'll listen to one more just for fun. Here, 21 points. What did I do? Well, let's listen. I agree with the idea of giving children homework on a daily basis. First of all, I think it helps children retain what they learn for a much longer period of time. The only real way for kids to absorb a lesson is to actually go home and repeat it as much as possible. Secondly, homework can give children opportunities to bond with their parents. So you can see what I did there, right? I just put in a lot of pauses everywhere, just all over the place. And my speaking rate went all the way down to 4 out of 100. And so that dragged my total score down to 21 out of 30. And I do hear responses like this like all the time. Students either just leave a lot of empty spots in there, or sometimes they'll say or ah, and that counts like a pause too. So you're not going to save yourself that way. But you can see once the speaking rate gets down to like, the doldrums, it just has an impact on everything. In that case, sustained speech just goes all the way down because those pauses start to count as disfluencies. The pause frequency is down just because there's just way too many of them. The distribution of pauses. And then the phrase length, those chunks, it's down to like 4 out of 100. Because, I mean, look at all these chunks I got. That's too many and they're too small. I need bigger chunks. My rhythm is great, but then once you get down to like really slowly, my vowels start to sound unnatural. So that score goes down as well. And then the vocabulary depth, there's just not enough words in there. So that gets really low. So as you can see, the slow speaking rate has an impact on everything. So let's kind of conclude by going back to the 25-point response. This one is like what I get all the time. Now, it's not normally just like a totally empty space. What I get is that it's an empty pause, or sometimes they'll say and that's the same. And so that's what's doing it for them. All right, I am going to leave it at that, but if you have any questions about this, leave them in the comments below, and I'll try to answer them as quick as I can. And in the meantime, keep an eye out for future videos exploring how the test is graded and other stuff like that. If you want to play around with my speaking score, I will put a link in the comments down below. I think if you sign up for free, you will get 2 free credits. So at least do that and play around. If you want to spend a bit of money, you can get more credits. But as I said at the beginning, I want your test preparation to be cheap, free. So like you don't even need to use this website to measure your speaking rate. You can just record yourself, listen to yourself, count the words, and then try to do better the next time. That's easy to do. And there's also a lot of websites where you can upload a file and get a transcript and a word count. So just keep that in mind as you prepare for the test. You don't need to spend a fortune to get 26 points on the speaking section of the TOEFL. I promise you, I guarantee you, you don't need to do that. All right, I am going to leave it at that, but please keep an eye on the channel. There's more videos coming. I'm in a video mood, so you should expect to see a ton of videos in the next month or so. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.